You've been working out harder than you did in your 30s, running more, sweating more, eating less, and your belly keeps growing, not shrinking. Nobody told you that your own effort might be the very thing feeding that fat. Here's something that will make you deeply uncomfortable. A woman walked into a metabolic research clinic in Boston, 53 years old, former marathon runner, still exercising 5 days a week, tracking every calorie with the precision of an engineer. Her belly fat had been growing steadily for 2 years, not because she stopped moving, not because she started eating junk food, but because her body had fundamentally rewritten the rules of the game, and nobody, not her trainer, not her physician, not a single article she'd read online, had bothered to tell her what was actually happening inside her own biology. That clinic wasn't measuring willpower. They weren't grading discipline. They were measuring cortisol. And what they found didn't just challenge everything this woman believed about exercise and fat loss. It challenged what most of the modern fitness industry tells women over 45. It challenged the very foundation of the advice millions of women are following right now, today, this morning, grinding through workouts that are silently making the problem worse. Let me take you back to where this understanding begins. There's a study, published in the journal Obesity Reviews, replicated across multiple metabolic laboratories in Europe and the United States, that quietly changed the way certain endocrinologists think about fat storage during the menopausal transition. It showed something counterintuitive, something that most personal trainers and even many conventionally trained physicians still haven't absorbed. In perimenopausal and postmenopausal women, high-intensity and prolonged exercise does not always reduce visceral fat. In some cases, it increases it. Read that again, slowly. Let it register. Exercise, the thing you've been told your entire life is the universal solution to body composition problems, can actively make your midsection worse. Not because exercise is bad, but because in a specific hormonal context, one that millions of women are living in right this moment, the body interprets intense physical exertion not as a path to fitness, but as a threat to survival. And when the body perceives threat, it reaches for its oldest, most powerful defense mechanism: cortisol. Now, you've probably heard of cortisol. Most people call it the stress hormone. That description is technically accurate, but it misses almost everything that matters. Cortisol isn't just about emotional stress, about bad bosses and traffic jams and arguments with your partner. It's the body's master alarm system, a chemical siren that blares through every organ, every tissue, every cell when the brain believes danger is present. Cortisol rises when you're anxious, absolutely, but it also surges when you skip meals, when you sleep poorly, when you exercise beyond your recovery capacity, when you push through exhaustion instead of resting. It's a survival molecule. It exists for one purpose: to keep you alive when conditions feel hostile. And here's where menopause creates a perfect, devastating storm that almost nobody is warning women about. Before menopause, estrogen serves as a sophisticated buffer system. It moderates cortisol's effects. It helps your body process stress efficiently, recover from physical exertion, shuttle glucose properly through your cells, and, this part matters enormously, store fat where it's biologically meant to go in younger women. In the hips, the thighs, subcutaneously beneath the skin. Estrogen is a brake pedal on cortisol's chaos. When estrogen drops during perimenopause and menopause, and it drops dramatically, often by 80% or more, that brake pedal effectively vanishes. Cortisol now operates without a counterbalance, without a moderator, without a ceiling. What does this mean in practical, lived terms? It means that a 45-minute boot camp class that used to leave you feeling energized and strong now leaves your body in a state of chemical emergency. It means that the 6-mile run that once efficiently burned fat is now triggering your adrenal glands to dump cortisol into your bloodstream. Cortisol that instructs your liver to release glucose you don't need, that signals your fat cells, specifically the visceral ones clustered deep around your abdominal organs, to hold on tighter, to expand, to accumulate, to protect you from a famine that isn't coming. Your belly fat isn't ignoring your exercise. It's responding to it, precisely, hormonally, biochemically, exactly as programmed. And this right here, is the part that fractures something inside me every time I see it in my practice. Because the women who carry the most stubborn belly fat during menopause are not the ones sitting on the couch. They're not the sedentary ones. They're not the ones who stopped caring. They are the disciplined ones, the warriors, the ones who set their alarms for 5 a.m. and never hit snooze, the ones who haven't missed a workout in months, the ones who cut carbs, eliminated sugar, skipped dessert at every birthday, pushed through aching knees and burning shoulders, and still watched their waistline expand month after month after month. They walk into my office already defeated, already convinced they're failing, already carrying this quiet, crushing shame that whispers, "You're lazy, you're undisciplined, you've let yourself go. What's wrong with you?" Nothing is wrong with them. Let me be blunt about this. They're not doing something wrong. They're doing the wrong thing. There's a difference between those two statements that can change a life. Now let me show you the mechanism, because once you understand it, once you actually see the machinery, you'll never look at your belly the same way again. Visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat that wraps itself around your liver, your intestines, your kidneys, your pancreas, is not the same tissue as the fat on your arms, your thighs, or your hips. It's metabolically distinct. And one of its most critical distinctions is this. Visceral fat tissue contains a dramatically higher density of cortisol receptors than any other fat deposit in your body. Think of these receptors as tiny satellite dishes, and cortisol as the broadcast signal. When cortisol floods your system, your visceral fat picks up that signal faster and louder than anywhere else. But it gets worse, much worse. When cortisol binds to those receptors, it activates a specific enzyme, 11-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase type 1. That's a mouthful, I know. But the effect is devastatingly simple. This enzyme converts inactive cortisone into active cortisol, right there, locally, inside your belly fat tissue itself. Your visceral fat isn't just receiving cortisol from your bloodstream, it's manufacturing its own private supply. That's not a metaphor. That's not simplification. That's published, peer-reviewed biochemistry. So now you have a feedback loop, and it's vicious. Exercise raises systemic cortisol. Elevated cortisol signals visceral fat cells to store more energy. Those expanding visceral fat cells then produce more local cortisol through that enzyme, which signals even more storage, which produces even more cortisol. You're on the treadmill running, and your belly fat is running a production line behind your back. Without estrogen to moderate this spiral, to dampen the HPA axis response, to buffer adrenal output, to regulate the cortisol clearance rate, the loop doesn't just sustain itself, it accelerates. This is precisely why the same workout routine that kept you lean and toned at 38 is actively working against you at 52. Your physiology fundamentally changed. Your exercise strategy never adapted. Wait, I need to be very careful here, because I know what some of you are thinking. I am not, absolutely not, telling you to stop exercising. That would be irresponsible, unscientific, and wrong. Exercise remains one of the most powerful interventions available for metabolic health, cardiovascular protection, bone density preservation, mood regulation, cognitive function, and longevity. The science on those benefits is indisputable, overwhelming, and clear. What I am telling you is that the type, the intensity, the duration, and the timing of your exercise need to fundamentally change during this hormonal transition. Here's what the actual research supports for women navigating this landscape. First, and this one shocks people, resistance training. Not the high-rep, lightweight, cardio-hybrid circuits that many gyms market to women. Genuine strength training. Loading your muscles with enough resistance to challenge them meaningfully. 2 to 4 sessions per week. Why? Because properly structured resistance training improves insulin sensitivity, builds metabolically active lean tissue that elevates your resting metabolic rate around the clock. And this is the critical distinction. Does not trigger the same prolonged, sustained cortisol elevation that long-duration cardiovascular exercise does. A well-designed strength session produces a brief, acute cortisol pulse that rises and falls within a healthy window. That's the pattern your body can process. That's the pattern that builds instead of breaking. Second, and I almost hesitate to say this because I know how it sounds, walking. I hear myself. You've been destroying yourself with HIIT classes and spin sessions, and someone is telling you to walk. But walking, particularly in the morning, particularly outdoors, particularly in natural light, is one of the most potent cortisol-regulating activities available to the human body. It lowers cortisol. It stabilizes blood glucose. It doesn't trigger the adrenal alarm cascade. It sends a single, clear chemical message to your nervous system. You are safe. You are not being chased. You are not under threat. You can release. That message, safety, is precisely the signal your menopausal body is desperately waiting to receive. Third, recovery. Genuine structural recovery. Not one grudging rest day per week where you feel guilty the entire time. Recovery means prioritizing sleep as if your metabolism depends on it, because it does. It means eating enough to support adrenal function, sufficient protein, adequate healthy fats, complex carbohydrates that provide steady glucose without the spike and crash pattern. It means recognizing that when your body sends persistent signals, fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, joint pain that won't resolve, waking at 3 a.m. with a racing heart, weight that refuses to budge despite perfect compliance, those signals aren't signs of weakness or laziness. They're cortisol speaking, loudly, clearly, and it's telling you to change course. I had a patient, Colleen, 57, a former competitive swimmer who'd built her whole identity around athletic discipline. She ran a swim school. She'd been in the water since she was 9 years old. She came to me after gaining 22 pounds in 18 months, every single ounce concentrated in her midsection. She was swimming an hour a day, 6 days a week. She'd slashed her calorie intake to 1,400 a day. She was exhausted beyond description, irritable with everyone she loved, sleeping in 90-minute fragments, and her fasting glucose had crept into pre-diabetic territory for the first time in her life. I asked her to do something that genuinely terrified her. I asked her to step away from the pool for 3 weeks. Not forever, not permanently. 21 days. She replaced her daily swim with 30-minute morning walks and 2 carefully structured strength sessions per week. We rebuilt her sleep environment. We fixed her nutrition timing. She'd been skipping breakfast entirely, which was causing her morning cortisol to spike even higher, since fasting extends the cortisol awakening response. In 3 weeks, she lost 4 pounds without counting a single calorie. Her fasting glucose dropped 11 points. She slept through the entire night, start to finish, no waking, no sweating, no pounding heart, for the first time in over a year. Colleen wept in my office, not because of the number on the scale, because she finally understood that she hadn't been failing for 18 months. Her strategy had been failing her, and the shame she'd been silently carrying, that heavy, corrosive belief that she was lazy, undisciplined, somehow fundamentally broken, dissolved in a single 40-minute conversation about a hormone she'd barely heard of. 6 months later, she was back in the pool. 3 days a week instead of 6. Strength training twice, walking every morning before her swim school opened. She'd lost 14 pounds total. Her glucose was normal. Her sleep was restored. And something had shifted in her eyes. A kind of calm authority that comes from finally understanding your own body instead of waging war against it. That kind of moment, that look on a woman's face when decades of misplaced guilt finally lift, is exactly why I do this work. And it's exactly because of women like Colleen. Women who needed a fundamentally different understanding of what was happening inside their bodies, that I put something together that goes far deeper than what any single video can cover. It addresses the specific mechanisms, the practical shifts, the things that actually move the needle when everything else has failed. I left it in the first link in the description and in the pinned comment. And I don't say this lightly. I believe it can change the way you approach this entire chapter of your life. Now, there's a second layer to this puzzle that doesn't get nearly enough attention. Cortisol doesn't act alone in this process. It has a biochemical accomplice during menopause, and that accomplice is insulin. When cortisol remains chronically elevated, not spiking and dropping in normal waves, but sustained at high baseline levels day after day, week after week, it progressively impairs your cell's ability to respond to insulin. This is the beginning of insulin resistance. Your pancreas notices that glucose isn't clearing from your blood efficiently, so it compensates by producing more and more insulin. And here's the metabolic trap that almost nobody connects to exercise. High circulating insulin is one of the most powerful fat storage signals your body possesses. It effectively locks fatty acids inside your fat cells and throws away the key. Those fat cells cannot release their stored energy while insulin remains elevated. They're sealed shut, particularly the visceral ones. So you're dealing with a double lock on your belly fat. Cortisol opens the storage vault and packs it full. Insulin bolts it shut from the inside, so nothing can escape. 2 hormones, 1 devastating partnership, both elevated by the very exercise you thought was saving you. And this is what makes the situation so cruelly ironic. Exercise that's too intense, too frequent, or too prolonged in this specific hormonal context raises both cortisol and insulin, simultaneously, in tandem. You're not just failing to burn belly fat, you're actively constructing the biochemical prison that keeps it locked in place. Brick by brick, session by session. Every punishing workout adding another bar to the cage. I've seen women exercising 2 hours a day, genuinely 2 hours, with cortisol and fasting insulin levels that would make an endocrinologist wince. And every single one of them believed the solution was to try harder. There's also a timing dimension that virtually nobody discusses. Cortisol follows a natural diurnal rhythm. It peaks in the early morning hours, ideally helping you wake up alert and energized. And then it should gradually decline throughout the day, reaching its lowest point in the evening as melatonin rises and prepares you for sleep. When you exercise intensely in the late afternoon or evening, those 7 p.m. boot camps, those 9 p.m. runs, you're artificially spiking cortisol at precisely the moment your body is attempting to wind down. This disrupts melatonin production. It fractures sleep architecture. It creates yet another cortisol cascade that ripples through your nighttime hours. Your belly fat pays the price while you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering why you can't sleep despite being exhausted. Morning movement, even gentle, even short, aligns with your body's natural cortisol curve. It works with the rhythm, not against it. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Here's the paradox that took me years of clinical observation to fully articulate in a way that women can hear. During menopause, the relationship between effort and outcome is no longer linear. More exercise is not better. Harder training is not faster results. longer sessions are not deeper fat loss. The women who finally break through the belly fat plateau are not the ones who train more intensely. They're the ones who learn to train with intelligence, who recognize that their body was asking for regulation, not punishment. Think about it this way. Your body is a small ship in a storm. Cortisol is the storm. Exercise is the wind in your sails. If you add more wind during a hurricane, the ship doesn't go faster. It capsizes. What you actually need is to calm the water first. Then, and only then, does the wind work for you instead of against you. That's the shift. From brute force to biological strategy. From raw discipline to metabolic intelligence. From fighting your body to finally listening to what it's been trying to tell you. And the peer-reviewed science validates this completely. A landmark paper published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism demonstrated that postmenopausal women who transitioned from high-intensity exercise protocols to moderate resistance training combined with stress management practices, structured breathwork, sleep optimization, daily walking, showed significantly greater reductions in visceral abdominal fat over a 12-week period compared to the high-intensity control group. Not marginally greater, significantly. The high-intensity group, on average, showed no meaningful change in visceral fat measurements. Several participants actually gained visceral fat over the study period, while exercising harder than the other group. Sit with that for a moment. There's something almost philosophical about reaching this stage of life, if you allow yourself to see it with clear eyes and an open heart. For 3 decades, maybe longer, your body operated on a straightforward, reliable contract. Push harder, and you'll get leaner. Work more, and you'll see results. Sweat equals progress. Discipline equals control. Sacrifice equals reward. It was simple, it was predictable, and it worked. And then one day, quietly, without announcement or fanfare or any kind of warning, that contract expires. Not because you stopped honoring your end of the deal, not because you got lazy, not because you aged out of deserving results, but because biology itself moved on. Because hormones shifted their priorities from reproduction to preservation. Because your body entered a chapter with completely different rules. Rules that nobody handed you, that no gym posted on the wall, that no fitness influencer thought to mention. And now that body is asking you for something you were never, in your entire life, taught to give it. Something that contradicts every fitness message, every motivational poster, every no pain, no gain mantra you've absorbed since you were a teenager. Gentleness, not weakness, not passivity, not throwing in the towel. Gentleness. The fierce, specific kind that can only emerge from genuine understanding. The kind that says, I finally see what's happening now. I understand the chemistry. I understand why my old approach stopped working. And I'm going to respond with intelligence and compassion instead of brute force and self-punishment. That's not giving up. That's not settling. That might be the most sophisticated, courageous form of self-care that exists. Metabolically, hormonally, and profoundly, irreversibly, humanly. If this conversation shifted something in how you understand your own body, if it gave you even a sliver of permission to stop blaming yourself for a problem that was never about discipline, I want you to subscribe to this channel. Because what we're building here goes deeper with every single video. And the conversation we'll have next takes everything we discussed today even further into territory that could genuinely change your life. Your body hasn't betrayed you, not even close. It's been sending you signals, persistent, clear, unmistakable signals, for months, maybe years, waiting patiently for the moment you'd finally have the information to understand what those signals actually meant. That moment might be right now. Don't let it pass.